Welcome, welcome. I'm so excited. Dr. Bruce Lipton is here with me today. I'm so thrilled he agreed to do this with me. And I had to book him so far in advance because he is so busy. Anyway, I'm a huge fan, obviously. I've had I'm just going to refer to you because everybody sees you're sitting here with me. So I want to say welcome to our conversation today, Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Oh, well, thank you, Miss Beautiful. Thank you for letting me be on your show.
You're welcome. I wanted to invite you because there's two really big things that we want to do today. And one of them is to talk about your latest book, The Honeymoon Effect. I got a chance, really luckily, to read it before it was released. Hay House sent me a copy. I have it both on my Kindle. I have it on my website. I've printed it. I've got it everywhere. It's awesome. And because you were so influential in me creating the content for my coaching institute, which is called the Envision Process, and when I wrote my book, The Map, it was really a conversation with you that was the petri dish of all I'd say the Bruce Lipton genius went into my little petri dish. It was the culture that began the whole thing, right? So I think
I contaminated your dish. I'm sorry.
You did. You contaminated my dish with such great ideas that now I have a whole school based on the contamination, okay? Anyway, so for those of you, absolutely, there's probably nobody in my fan base that doesn't know who you are, but I want to mention that you have 3 books. And the first book that really took the world by storm was called The Biology of Belief. The second one was Spontaneous Evolution, and this latest one is The Honeymoon Effect.
Yes.
So how the heck did you get from being head of the biology department at Wisconsin University and a professor of hard science, hard old school science, right, come to where we are today as one of the leaders? And I know you don't like to say that because you're so humble and make a joke, but you are. You're one of the leaders in the frontier of bringing science and spirituality together and consciousness movement. I mean, you're the guy. You're like the guy. So, how did it happen?
Well, I'll tell you, Colette, it was interesting because I started out not as head of the department. I wasn't head of the department. I was just one of the peons in the anatomy department in the medical school, doing my research and cloning stem cells, and at the same time teaching the basic science to medical students about how life works, And the significance was that the research I was doing in the lab on cells revealed a completely different reality than what I was teaching to medical students. So I'm teaching in the classroom a concept called genetic determinism, which means genes control the character and fate of your life. And then you say, well, that's interesting. You got the genes at birth, and as far as we know, you didn't pick them, and you can't change them if you don't like the characteristics. So basically, it says you were programmed with a blueprint for your life at the moment of conception, and you had nothing to do with it. So you're a victim because you can't control your genes. So I'm teaching victim in the classroom, but the cells I was working on, stem cells, and this was 45 years ago, so there's just a handful of us in the world that
you were 6 years old. My goodness, you were some grade 1 teaching this class at university.
I was old before my time.
Yeah, I get it.
So, and the research on the stem cells revealed a completely different story than what I was teaching, because it revealed that the environment was controlling the genes, not the genes controlling the system. And the relevance to humans is simply this: you control your environment. So if you can control your environment and your environment controls your genes, then by definition, you are the master of your biology, not the victim of your biology. So there was diametrically opposed belief systems. My colleagues were very much into genetics because that was really the big booming business at the time. It was gold in California. Everybody was running toward the genetics mine to get what they can. And I'm the guy on the outside going, it's not the genes. It's not the genes. And of course, nobody listened to me, which was an irritation, of course. And at some point, I realized I'm wasting my time here because I saw a truth. It was repeatable, every week, do the experiments over and over again, repeat it all the time. And I thought it was so profound, but it was not in the way they were thinking. So at some point, I realized I get out of the system. And I walked out because I thought they're not being scientific, because you can't discard my stuff just because you don't like it.
Right.
So I left, and sometimes if you're having a wonderful meal, you have like sherbet between the plates, to cleanse the palate. For cleansing the palate, that's when I ended up producing a laser rock show with a musician who I pulled out of college, and people know him by the name of Yanni. And that was my little rock and roll stint, which cleansed my palate and my wallet. In fact, I got cleansed of everything.
My wallet.
At some point, I ended up going back to academia, where I felt a little bit more secure on the ground, and I went to Stanford and continued my work at Stanford and published a couple of papers, and then realized I'm in the same place. Everybody was doing genetics and genetic engineering and giving all the emphasis to the genes, and it was sort of like, you are making people victims with this belief. And I just, was like, no, you can control your biology and your genes. And I left again. And it was interesting because right at that time, a new science was created, a new field of science called epigenetics. And very simply is genetic control, what I was teaching, means control by genes. Epigenetic control is a revolution. I mean, you put that little epi in the front and the world changes for this reason. Epi means above.
Right.
So I say genetic control, control by genes. But if I say epigenetic control, then I'm literally saying control above the genes. And all of a sudden I said, well, what's above the genes? I go, your consciousness and your perception and your attitudes about life, they control your genes. So there's a science to that. And in fact, when I wrote The Biology of Belief in 2005, talking about how our life experiences and beliefs change our genes, well, guess what? Just 2 years ago, I think now, it's the second year, there's a branch of epigenetics called behavioral epigenetics. Guess what? It's a scientific field about how your experiences and your life and your emotions all contribute to the control of your genetic activity. So I saw it 40-some years ago, but science is now just coming into the reality of environment and experience as being a controlling factor. They don't want to go too the health industry is not a free-thinking industry. It's an industry that's controlled by massive amount of money from the pharmaceutical industry.
So I just want to jump in right then. You said something that's important, and that now that there's this new science coming out called behavioral epigenetics, is what I really, really took away from your first book, The Biology of Belief, because you said belief, right? Was that the way consciousness affects the body, that there's a direct relationship between the way we think, the only time my phone rings is when I'm doing something important. Isn't that something? Well, you know what? This will be the blooper on the reel that we're going to show everybody, but that's fine. So, since I can't edit this, and this is such a great conversation. And my phone literally never rings. I'm serious. So, anyway, we talked about the biology of belief. We talked about how the belief or the consciousness, whether it be the thinking mind, which we usually consider as the boss of things, right? But we also, we agreed on, you and I didn't agree, but everybody's agreeing that the subconscious is the programmed mind, because everything is based on memory, right? So that we are today a product of memory, that if we could create some kind of epiphany or spiritual epiphany, which, or change, dramatic change, we can completely create new neural pathways in the brain, which is the science part of, right, where we put these things together.
Absolutely, because if we're stuck with just our old belief systems, then this would be a really lousy world, because if you really start off with a bunch of lousy beliefs, you'd never get out of that. You'd always be there. But there, especially because there's in conscious parenting, and we talk about children we call resilient wonders. Resilient wonders are kids that come from the worst environment possible you could ever imagine, but have a different belief system and rise up out of that place and become leaders and important people in the world, even though they came from the worst start. And how does that happen? The answer is because we can change the programming. But first of all, you have to know you have programming.
You have to know you have them. That's right. You have to, and you have to know what they are. I think too. I think that. Or at least, like I always say, if you name it, you can claim it, because what you can't see, I mean, you may not have to analyze it or understand it analytically to the point where you've taken it all apart and really get it, because that's just looking at the mechanics. You don't see the ghost in the machine. right? So it's the ghost in the machine that you want to integrate with that to see, okay, if we can influence this somehow. And would you say that the repetitive influence, when you repeat something enough times, it then becomes the reality or the truth, even if it doesn't start out as true for you?
Absolutely. There's two important points just about that. Number one is this: we have to own a very interesting aspect about what is the role of the mind.
Right.
Well, the mind has beliefs and creative wishes and desires and all that, and it has beliefs in it primarily from the way we grew up. That this is the way the world operates. Well, the relevance about that, and here's the very important part, the relevance to the mind is its function is to create behaviors that are coherent with the belief. So if you get programmed with a negative belief, then the function of the brain is not to say positive or negative. The function of the mind is to manifest whatever the program is.
Right.
So all of a sudden, we start to recognize that the programming is what shapes us, okay? And then the issue, of course, the big issue is, well, what the heck are the programs?
Right.
Because they started in your last trimester of pregnancy and they worked up through the first 7 years of your life. This is a period where the brain is designed to download massive amounts of information just for a simple point. Look, you're a kid, you're going to be part of a family. You got to know the rules. You have to know the rules, how to be a kid in the family, and who's in charge, and what, and how the things run, and how you become a member of society, and all these things. So imagine, let's say there's young 2-year-old Colette. I said, okay, sit down now. I'm going to take out a pencil and paper, Colette, because we're going to do. You need to learn how to become a member of society. So here are the rules, and then I start teaching you, and it's obvious like, you can't do that. So, but yet the child needs to learn a massive number of rules, how to behave.
I want to go backwards a little bit when you said in the first trimester of pregnancy. Is that or
last
the third?
trimester? Last trimester.
The last trimester of pregnancy. Okay, so this makes sense because I call sometimes people have these programs that bring up fear for them, right? So there's these primitive ideas about whether they're safe or not. In my case, my mom was a Holocaust survivor, and during that time, even though she was depressed while she was pregnant, but I know that I tuned into a lot of her emotional programs and reactive programs around safety, around food, around all of these different things, and especially around money and not having enough.
All of that is safety and survival.
Yeah, safety and survival. Yep. And I know that even though my parents were well-to-do and they raised us to believe that we had everything, I've had this weird scarcity program because my mother, she was arrested during the war for stealing potatoes because she was starving, right? Yeah. So, and my grandfather was in the camps, right? So, and I didn't even know any of that, right? So.
No, but it's very interesting because one of the interesting stories about epigenetics is that a parent's experience can be passed on to the offspring epigenetically, meaning what you experience in your life could alter your genes, but not only alter your genes, but alter the genes of your germ cells. And in the case of a woman, those are the eggs, okay? And so what they found out is called the grandmother effect, and they found that what the grandmother was going through altered the genes of the mother, who in turn altered the genes of the daughter, so that the grandmother's action and response to life had altered the genetic readout that was passed. And this alteration, epigenetics, it doesn't change the genetic code, it changes how you read the genetic code. Okay?
Right.
Well, the relevance about that is you can change that back again. The grandmother changed it in her life because of her experiences, and if you address the issues, then you can change them in this life just as she changed them in her life. But if you don't address the issues, then you unconsciously will follow through on a lot of this behavior.
Right, okay? Because you don't know they're there. Right, so it's a reactive thing, right? So you might be triggered by something in the outer world, or there's an argument that you might have manifested that because you're looking for it. You're looking for coherence, right? I mean, the subconscious is like a pair of little eyes going, "Where is the thing that I know to be true?"
That's right. And what behavior can I do to ensure that it is true? That's the most important one of all, because the mind's function is to take your belief and then turn it into a play into your life. And so if you believe you're not lovable,
you are going to
And why would you believe that? And of course, we can talk about all the parenting issues about that. But then the whole concept is that if I am programmed not to be lovable because I don't love myself, then by definition, I cannot be loved by anybody else, because if somebody loves me, then you have to say, well, who the hell are they? If I can't love me, well, how can they love me? They have no taste.
Right.
You know?
Or even it could even go even more deeper than that, with just a fact related, like that doesn't compute. Right? That just doesn't compute. Why would I be even vaguely attracted to that? That's not reality to me, therefore it can't exist in my world, right?
And you will unconsciously create behavior to make that belief coherent, and you will push that person away because the belief says, this isn't for me. Even if my conscious mind's going, oh, I really want this, it's the program. And you will push this person away with your unconscious behavior, while your conscious mind is in shock, like, but this is what I want and it's not here. What happened?
Yeah. I know a lot of people don't want to look past that. And I think that's, I think there's two schools of thought. What I do in my work is coaching. So we're not therapists, so we don't go into the analyzing of the wound or analyzing of the program. We just want to short circuit it, right, in our methods. But I want to go back into this piece because it's so important, about the fact that there's an automaticism, right? There's an expectation of one way of reality, that unless you actually take time to change it or to do something different enough times, that it will change, which of course brings the science of neuroplasticity back in around the brains, right? So that we can change, but how do we do that change, right? And in the Honeymoon Effect, you talk about that, which I think is so important that everybody read this, because nobody feels good these days, and this is a feel-good book. How do you make your life better? It's getting into that state.
And you can get there because you've done it before. That's the first thing I have to tell people. What's the honeymoon thing about? And I say, I ask 3 questions of an audience, which I always frame it. And the 3 questions I ask are, go back to a time you fell head over heels in love with somebody. Yeah. Now, it may have lasted a week. It could have lasted a month. You're lucky a year, but it doesn't have to be forever. I just want you to go back to that moment where it's like, oh, I'm in love. And I say, were you healthy? And almost everyone says I was exuberantly healthy if they go back to that time period. I say, question 2, did you have energy? And we all laugh about that one because people made love for days without stopping for food or sleep. So you got a lot of energy. And then the third question, which is really that's the pivotal question, is, was life so beautiful that you couldn't wait for the next day to wake up and have more of that experience? Yeah. And everybody goes, yes, 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 yes. I go, well, look. It was like heaven on earth, wasn't it? It was so much you couldn't wait to share and do more and more. It was so beautiful. And I say, well, that's a honeymoon effect. I say, what's significant about the honeymoon effect is that was not an accident. Mm-hmm. That was a personal creation. And the significance about that, well, then how did you do that? Well, here's the important point. First of all, we don't go into how right now. Mm-hmm. If you've done it, I'm going to tell you right now, that was a personal creation. That was not an accident. It wasn't a coincidence. You got involved and you manifested this expression. And then at some point, for almost everybody, that thing disappears. Mm-hmm. And so then it becomes regular life, and you love the person, but it's not like that, oh, God, am I so happy to be alive kind of thing. Okay, but it's like, okay, we're here, And basically, why is this important? Because A, you created this, and B, when you lost it, that too was not an accident. That was another creation. And the difference between these two right away is this: the first creation of creating love came from your conscious mind, and the second creation of losing love came from the subconscious mind. Okay,
let's go here. So, so when you say from the conscious mind, then you're assuming that there's a decision. So, because are we talking about the conscious meaning the thinking mind? Because the subconscious mind is that automatic lower layer of the brain. Then the unconscious, of course, is the dreaming mind. So we have that, so are we talking about the thinking mind that stimulated it?
Okay, the conscious mind is actually connected to a piece of the brain right behind your forehead called the prefrontal cortex. It's the latest evolution of the brain.
Correct.
It is the seat of your personal identity. It's the seat of your spirit. It's where you come in to operate the machinery. It's like a little room with a desk and a controlling device, and when you sit in that seat, you're driving this thing around. Your decisions from that seat are you manifest them.
You create it. It's creative.
Totally creative.
Yeah, it's creative.
And that's the most important part about the conscious mind. It is the creative mind. The other mind's habit mind. Creative mind means, what do you want out of your life? Oh, as soon as I ask you that question, the first thing is going to be creative. Why? Because you're manifesting it now. It hasn't happened. So I say, what do you want? And so when you come up with your picture of heaven on earth and health and happiness and all this kind of stuff, I say, great, that's a creative mind. That's where that comes from, okay?
Yeah.
And then I say, well, the issue about the creative mind is not only is it that unique part that is creative, but it's not time-bound.
Not time-bound. Aha. Timelessness. And that is true. Everybody feels that way. When you're falling in love, the first thing, it's like everything is hopeful. Everything is possible, right? You can just imagine that whatever was there before has now got new colors to it, right? So green is now emerald, right? Blue is azure now. Like everything is possible in so many facets. I get it. Yeah. And then you can create from that.
That's it. And so it's cognition. Consciousness is like, there's a dashboard on this thing that makes you go left, makes you go right, tells you to stand up, whatever you want. When you're in the conscious mind, you have your hands on the wheel. Mm-hmm. You're driving this thing wherever you want it to go. Right. You want to make a romance, man. In the honeymoon period, you are living romance. Okay, you are fully out there, creating from your wishes. All your cognitive. Okay, then I say, well, yeah, but here's the problem with the conscious mind. It's great because it's creative, and this is not a problem. This is cool as well. Is that I say, what are you doing next week? And you can think into next week. And I say, what'd you do last week? And you can think back into last week. Or I could say, in your head, imagine, and all of a sudden you disconnect and you go up into the theater in your head. Well, what was the point? Every moment that you're not paying attention to the current moment.
Right.
Because your consciousness is thinking about, oh, I got to do this, and oh, that happened last week, and blah, blah, blah. The moment your consciousness is not at the present moment, the default, you don't stop your behavior because I'm not paying attention.
No, the default is the behavior, is the original behavior.
The default goes to the subconscious.
The expected behaviors, right? The expectation of disappointment. The expectation, yeah. Mm-hmm.
These were behaviors that you got from other people primarily. You can create your own. I mean, you learn how to drive a car on your own.
Right.
But how do you relate to a mate? That program was put in there by your family and your parents and your community. Okay? Because you observe them. And that's because, remember we talked about in that early childhood, I can't sit you down in the seat and say, here's school. So the brain, for the first 7 years, is automatically in a record mode called theta. And all it does is observe like a video camera. Your mother, your father, your siblings, your community, your culture, just records. Not in consciousness, it's like bypassing consciousness and shooting straight down to the database. Mm-hmm. Now, my conscious mind runs the show, except when my conscious mind's thinking. The moment it's thinking, it's not paying attention, we shift automatically default to the subconscious mind. Right. But then I say, yeah, but the programs in the subconscious mind fundamentally, these were downloaded from other people. Relevance. When you default into that subconscious, you're not necessarily playing any programs that support your wishes and desires and what you want from life. You're playing programs that you got from other people. And they have no reason to support anything that you want. But the problem is this. You are now playing automatic programs. And if these programs don't support you, then automatically you are playing programs that are sabotaging you or disempowering you. But the problem is this. Are you observing these programs? And the answer is, not really, no. Why? Because your conscious mind's not paying attention. That's why you're playing the program.
Right, so, you haven't trained it. You haven't trained it to pay attention.
Right. So I give it in the lecture a simple story that almost everybody relates to, but it's like, this is how it works. And the point is, I say, you didn't know how to drive a car. You got a license. You practice how to drive a car. You practice, habit, repeat what we talked about. Yep. Now I know how to drive the car by habit. Okay. Now you've been driving for a while. You get in a car with a close friend. You start driving off to some destination. You get into a conversation with your friend. It's really cool. You're talking and talking and talking. And then at some moment of clarity, you look out the window.
Right.
And you realize you haven't paid attention to the road for the last 10 minutes, you know? Right. And then so I go, now here's the learning from that story. And most people have experienced it. I say, here's the learning. Number one, can you tell me what the conversation was about? And you go, yeah, we talked about this and this and this and this. Yeah, because your conscious mind was engaged in the conversation.
Yep.
Then I say, and can you tell me what happened on the road during the 10 minutes you were driving? And you go, Nope, I didn't see it. Why?
Right.
Well, it's in the conversation. So I say, fundamental, profound, simple story. What your conscious mind focuses on, it pays attention to that. What it's not paying attention to is run automatically, default. Yeah, but when you're running it by default, the reason why you're running by default is you're not paying attention. And if you're not paying attention, then when you're running that behavior by default, you didn't even see what the behavior was. You didn't even see it. I mean, you're still in the car, you're still driving, you're safe, but the reality is you cannot tell me who or what was on that road during that 10-minute period.
And the same thing too with the actual driver. So you are not, like for me, I ride a motorcycle, so I'm automatic. Well, you have to really focus when you're driving a motorcycle, and I don't really have anybody to talk to. But if I were to not pay attention, I would have to be automatic about my clutch and slowing down and, changing gears, etc. And in the beginning, when you're first learning, it's like, oh my God, I got to do this, then I got to go that, then I got to look like that, and then there's so many different moving parts, and you're like a panic attack. But when it's automatic, right, it's like, well, what did you do? I don't remember what gear I was in.
Right.
Right.
So now you just take that story and put it right in the same story. I have behavioral programs that I got from observing my family and community growing up, that they were put in first. They are the default programs. So I have my wishes and desires, my conscious mind, but the moment my conscious mind is thinking about next week, then by default I play this behavior. And then I say, yeah, did you see the behavior? And the answer is, no, just like driving the car. My thought was over here. I didn't see what happened. And now we find out, so the science comes down to simple fact. 95% of our life comes from the default programs.
Okay, let's stop right there with the 95% thing, because that's a really great question I want to ask you. Okay, so many of I'm going to call it you guys, meaning the authors that I'm fortunate to rub elbows with, who are scientists and doctors, you're a professor, blah, blah, blah. Okay. You guys have all referred to the reality that we experience as 95% in the mind and 5% as, the five sensory experience. Can you just explain a little bit more? People ask me that all the time about that correlation. So 95% is in the head, because the environment of our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs is where we live. And then only 5% of it is physical. So can you put those two together a little bit for me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. You're flying a plane.
Okay.
You got hands on the wheel, you're flying the plane.
Right.
But sometimes you want to go do something, so you push the button autopilot.
Right.
That gives you a chance to go back and do something, then you come back, you sit down in the seat, then you say, okay, put my hands on the wheel, now I'm flying the plane again.
Right.
Okay? The nature of our life is that the subconscious is the autopilot.
Right.
So basically, I can drive this vehicle around and do what I want with my wishes and desires. That's how I create the honeymoon effect.
Right.
I made that with wishes and desires. But when I lose the honeymoon effect, why I lose it is because at some point, life gets so busy that I put on autopilot. Okay, so I'm putting on an autopilot. And the problem is, when I put it on autopilot, because I'm going to go do something. Okay?
Right.
Well, the problem is, since if the programming of the autopilot sucks, it could cause my plane to crash, right? I got bad autopilot program.
It could be corrupt. It could be the corrupt program, right? So in other words,
it allows me to use my consciousness to focus on details and allow the unconscious to manage every other move, including driving the car and talking to somebody or doing a job, all of these things. So basically it says, and 5% of the time you have your hands on the wheel.
Right.
95% of the time you're in the back seat. Now you have suggestions for the driver.
Right.
I would like to go towards success. That's really cool. And the driver drives you down, back streets and the bad roads, okay? And you say, what the hell are you doing down here? Because you wake up when you look out the window and go, this isn't where I want to be, and how did I get here? And it's like, okay, I didn't see how I got here, so guess what? It wasn't me that got here. It was the world created this, and I was just there, and look what happened. So all of a sudden, I'm a victim because I didn't see I was driving the car with an autopilot, and the autopilot was not designed for my success.
Okay, now that's a great comment. So, or you could look at it like this way: that the autopilot is programmed to the success it knows, that is no longer in alignment with where you want to go. And that's it. In order for you to take the wheel back, you have to be conscious. In my work, I have 3 questions. Where am I? When am I? And who am I listening to? So I always say, if you're not now, you're some when else, which means you've lost the ability to affect change. And the best way to actually make those changes happen is to be able to get yourself out of the story, out of the movie. So you can be in the observer as well. You can look at that, like observing the programs, what you talked about first, and then seeing. So
the consciousness, by its definition, is called self-consciousness, which means observing of self.
Observing of self, yeah.
So that what you really want to do is get back and say, where am I in this picture, rather than this picture is running automatically, and what a hell of a movie this is.
Right, right. And emotions, don't you find too, though? Okay, so I've been doing some studies on some of this, and I just want to make sure I get it right. So, would you say that, because there are three brains that science has found, or that accepting right now, that they have so far said okay, right? So that there's the cephalitic brain, right? Is that what it's called? The head?
The reptile brain? You want to go?
No, the whole brain, the head brain, the heart brain, and the gut brain, right?
Oh,
so
okay, that's the subdivision, yeah.
Right, okay. So if we were to look at it like that, the heart brings you to the person, but then the creativity gets ignited, that prefrontal cortex. But that if we get away from the wheel, then the primitive brain, the reptile brain, then takes over, and you go right back to the beginning again, because it's all it knows, right? So it just goes back to what it knows.
All it can do is play out whatever the program is. If there's no program to cover it, it doesn't even know what to do with it. But if you've been programmed to drive a car, and you let your mind go while your hands are on the wheel, the program will take care of it, okay?
Right.
But if it was some brand new novel event, the first thing your automatic program do will wake you right up saying, hey, something's going on because we don't have a program for this. And so that's when you get drawn back into what the hell is going on here, because the subconscious is saying, I can't handle this. I don't even know what I don't have a program for this.
So this why, do you think this is why a lot of people are having a difficult time right now? I mean, we all know that. I mean, you said it so eloquently in your book, Spontaneous Evolution, about the idea that we're imaginal cells in this big giant butterfly, and it's not fun being in that cocoon, killing yourself off right until the better thing happens. So I think that people talk about wanting to change, but they're not willing to experience the discomfort of the change when the program goes, "What the heck? Like, who are you? This doesn't fit." Right?
Well, what they really need to know is that you see, when you're conscious, that's the moment you have a button. You could say, push this button. With a conscious mind, I could think about, do I want to push this button? And then it's my decision. Right. The unconscious mind doesn't think about it, just looks at the situation, scores up what's going on, and immediately comes to a decision and pushes a button or not pushes a button without your decision, just based on experiences and history, okay? So basically, when you operate from the subconscious mind, by definition, you're allowing the program to run the machine. And when the program runs the machine, then we have what we call everyday life, because that's what our life is every day. 95% of our life comes from that. And it doesn't mean all the programs are bad, but sure they're not. I mean,
but it prevents people from making, sometimes I think if they have an expectation, they get so far in their business, for example, or in they get so far in their life and they know that it's not enough and they need to go to the next level, but they keep falling back to the same place again. Like, how the heck did I get here? What is it that makes me keep coming back here? Yeah. And you said earlier about the behaviors, because these automatic behaviors of setting yourself up for failure or for not being able to move past that marker because you haven't shaken up the program, you haven't removed it to replace it with something else. Right?
Absolutely. If you don't replace it, you can't. You let somebody say, well, I'm just going to ignore that. I'm not going to engage in that. It's like, well, that's a nice conscious thought, but it has nothing to do with you, because the moment you shift into subconscious, your wishes and desires are not relevant anymore. It's just program. So the fact is, if there's a program in there that doesn't support you, you can't just say, I'm not going to let that get in my way. That's not your choice. That's just automatically going to get in your way anyhow. The way out is you must reprogram that. You must put in an alternate program that the system will defer to rather than the existing one. And the part that's really neat about this is because it's like, as you brought up, it's like, well, there's lots of behaviors that are in there that I have no idea what the hell they are, where they are, because they were there before I was conscious even. And I go, but then we just refer back and say, look, 95% of your life comes from the subconscious, so your life is a printout of your subconscious. And then all you have to do is look and say, everything that comes to me easily and that I want is there because I have a program that brings it in. And then the reverse is important. Things I have to struggle for, things that I don't like that keep coming into my life, they didn't come in here by accident, they came in here by program. So
Right.
the basic thing is, you don't have to go back and say where the program came from, who the program came from. That's your
It doesn't matter. Exactly. That's the idea of over analyzing. It just anchors you into the program. The more you talk about it, the more you
get
just
out
go,
of it.
wow.
You keep playing the same track. It just makes the groove
Yeah.
deep each time you play it. And the simple thing, just think the logic of this statement, and the statement is this. There's an old phrase, killing the messenger over the message. Okay?
Right.
The messenger brings you bad news, so you kill the messenger, and it's like, yeah, but it was the bad news you're upset about.
Yeah.
So just think the simplicity of this, trying to go back in your life and review who said what, who did who, and all that kind of stuff like that. That's going and attacking the messengers.
Right.
It's irrelevant who taught you the message. What's relevant is what is the message. And I say, well, that's easy. The message is playing out in your day-to-day life. All you have to look at is say, anything I have to work hard at, anything I struggle for, anything I sweat over, anything that's not coming, is not coming not because you can't get it and you don't deserve it. It's not coming because you have an unconscious program that does not support that being in your life.
So let me ask you a question. And I think on the practicality piece, okay, so I have a very specific process that I do that helps people shift out of their program so that they could see something completely different. And if they do it often enough, those feelings become habits. The habit then becomes a program. And so the expectation is more, it's harder for the really deeply grooved ones. But, you know, I think that once you start to see, I think there's a euphoric newness, right, that happens that reminds you of that honeymoon effect, where that, right, where that heart and the creative imagination come together. And it's like, woo!
Yeah, and
Anything
when
is
you
possible.
do it successfully, it's a learning event in itself. Because when you, let's say you had a behavior and all of a sudden you consciously broke that behavior, there's a moment of reward that comes into the system. It's like, oh my God, I didn't go through that. I always used to, I didn't go through that.
Yeah.
That is the reward that the system is looking for, because then the system is beginning to understand, oh, this is the response, not this is the response. How do I know? Because I'm getting a reward back from consciousness saying this is good, you did good, you did good. And the problem is, unfortunately, we just make this is the way we want it, and when it doesn't work, we get mad at ourselves.
Right.
And that's yelling at the subconscious mind, which is yelling at it like a 5-year-old child.
Right.
It doesn't make the subconscious mind learn any better. In fact, it actually will inhibit the learning of the subconscious mind by getting mad at yourself and yelling at yourself, because the subconscious mind is like a precocious 5-year-old. You give it love, it will follow that plan. You give it scolding and threatening, it will, shy away from everything at that moment.
So let's talk about the reward. In the Envision process, we have a system where the person, asks where they are, and they go into this, the unconscious or the dreaming mind delivers. It's a delivery system. It's active imagination. Will show you, oh, stress equals swamp. In my case, stress equals looking at the orcs being built at the Lord of the Rings, right, in a big cavern. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in a factory of orcs. So the mind has, it'll do what it does because it has memory that it's seen these things and puts it together with creativity, right? So, and what we do is we jump on a bird, and which represents the relationship since the beginning of time, since we've seen them on cave dwellings, cave paintings, where the bird represented the relationship between the human and spirit, right? Because we couldn't fly. So everybody knows that somewhere in their psyche, even though they don't know it intellectually at all, they know it at an awareness level, a bird will bring me to safety. So up you go, and the reward for us is that stress point in the very beginning that we were able to describe and detach and observe from a different point of vantage. The reward is immediate, because all of a sudden we're like, we're cool. It's different. It's small. We see it from a completely different spatial reality. And because we know what it's like to be above something and below something, so the spatial distance that is implied in the imagination immediately takes away the stress, and you're somewhere else. So so for us, the reward is the immediate removal of stress in less than 3 minutes, and almost like a euphoric aha moment. We call ourselves epiphany midwives for a reason, because it's like, whoa, I'm not there. Do I want to go back there? Well, no. All right. So, and if you do it often enough, right?
Every time you do that, the reward tells the system to make a pathway to go toward the reward.
Right.
That is nature built us into organisms that don't have the consciousness we have. Wanted to build in and said, look, there's a drive to survive. If you follow the right path, you survive. If you go off on the wrong path, you threaten your survival. Well, how do you teach a small animal, that is not the consciousness we have? How do you say, follow this path, don't follow that path? The answer is this: pleasure and pain.
Right.
When you're given pleasure, it is a reinforcement that whatever that behavior was, that was really good, do more of that. When you're in pain or discomfort, it's nature's way of telling you whether you're conscious or not.
Right.
So it happens before consciousness of an organism. It's like, uh-oh, I don't feel good here. And what is it going to do? Change its behavior. So the concept is this: pleasure and pain have been the dividing that was there before consciousness. Animals didn't know what they should be doing, but when they did the wrong thing, it hurt. So basically, they followed that. We have the whole pleasure and pain syndrome. So pleasure becomes an important part of the system. It's a feedback saying, that behavior you just did was really good. Do it again. Okay?
And is the science around it, I read a book by Dr. Candace Pert about the molecules of emotion, right? So those are let me see if I get this right. The neuropeptides speak to the receptor cells speak to the neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters then release what? Hormones? So they tell the next part to release a hormone, and then that's why you get the serotonin and the... Right.
Basically, there's a higher level of control, and as you start at the higher level, which is full consciousness, then you can control the unfolding of every step. But once you start the process and it goes below the level of consciousness, now it's automatic and chemical and machinery, but you were the one that's pushed the button at the beginning. So
right. You had to do the process. You had to actually do something. So let's go to your...
That's where the reward comes from. The reward comes from, I just broke a behavior. I know for the first time in my life, I'm not a victim of that behavior. Why? I just stopped it. And all of a sudden, it's like, wow, that's great, man, because I did something. I controlled it. That's the reward.
So a lot of people don't recognize that there's a behavior related to their beliefs, right? They think that it's just in their head, right? So the idea that that belief, thought, belief, and emotion are the roots of behavior, right? But
Yes.
but we just think that there's no behavior attached to it. So a lot of people, because they go, how is this happening? Because
exactly, because they're the ones that are having a conversation while the car is going down the street. So in their head, they're having some kind of conversation, but they're not realizing the driver behind the wheel has a lousy driver education and is driving the car into the ditch. So, and then you wake up and say, wait, the car's in the ditch. How the hell did that happen? Well, that's because when you weren't paying attention, you drove the car into the ditch, but not you. The program drove the car into the ditch.
You know, I find this a lot with my my coaching clients. I have a small group of very, very high level achievers. That one guy's a multimillionaire, and actually he's a billionaire. But anyway, and the only difference that I see between these guys and they're all men, than some of these other ones that I have, who are actually also men except for two women, are belief. Seriously, like one over here wants to know how that one over there got what they got. But they just don't accept, the ones over here don't accept anything less than that. And they've taken the action that the behavior is of expectation. There's an expectant behavior and curiosity about what the next step is to maintain that, or they just take it for granted. And the other ones are about the struggle and the lack, right? So that, and then the behavior, and the behavior that is emotion based, right? So and we send that signal out. So I think behaviors can also be very subtle.
Oh, absolutely, right? Especially the emotional chemicals, because those are telling us to go towards something or away from something, but and how much a degree. So the emotional chemicals really, actually, you have three responses to anything in your life. Three responses: you go towards something, you go away from something, or you just stand still and you don't get involved at that moment. Okay, so those are the three. Now the emotions are broken into those three, but they're also then into ranges. So an emotion has a range. I like someone is going toward someone, but it's not the same as I love someone, which I'm still going toward them, but I'm going toward them with much more, assertion. I'm really moving that way. So the emotions are like the speedometer
right.
of the movement, but it can move forwards or backwards. And so we have positive emotions and negative emotions, and the more you put the emotions into it, the more power, the more acceleration you're going in that direction.
So if we change our beliefs, emotions, and thoughts, or thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, Would you also say then that we are changing our frequency of how we resonate with the rest of the world, or how we're, and because people have a tendency to think attraction means that they are attracted to something mentally, when really it's an energetic thing. It's a field thing, right? It's a mirroring.
It's all feeling. It's all feeling. I say to people, I say, look, there's a big shoe sale at this store, Nordstrom's, top end of the store. I say, you go to this store and there's a stand out there, there's 10 pair of shoes. I say, they're all made by the same maker, 10 different, different styles. I say, they're all the same price, they're all on sale, you're going to pick one. And let's get down to the bottom line. You did pick one, and you walked out, and then I say, tell me the primary reason why this one was picked and the 9 others were not picked. Right. And the answer comes down to the bottom thing. It made me feel good.
Right. It made me feel good.
And selection was based on my feelings.
Right. So we can actually, in a really simplistic way, because again, I'm going to refer back to the Envision Process, because I'm showing this about your book as well as this, and we're just going to keep going because this is working out great. But the idea that if we shift our feelings and then we repeat it, so we actually go consciously, we make the choice to continuously repeat that over and over again. Until,
let me just stop you, because this is a requirement. The repeat is a requirement for this reason. People have to get this clear, because this is a confusing issue that screws up everybody's mind. The conscious mind and the subconscious mind are interdependent.
Right.
They work independently of each other, but they work together as well, but they're not connected. Relevance. The conscious mind learns in a different way than the subconscious mind learns. So I can teach the conscious mind one way, but to teach the subconscious mind, I got to do it another way. They don't work the same, and they're not connected. And this is where people fail, because they say, "Oh, I just educated my conscious mind, so now my subconscious mind should know this as well." And the answer is no. 2 minds. You can educate the conscious mind and never once touch the program in the subconscious mind.
And it won't work then.
No, it won't work.
No.
Because, and I say, well, and here's how they learn. So this is why your work becomes important in the repetition. The conscious mind is creative. It can just go, look, I can see a video, I could read a self-help book, I could just have, aha, and all of a sudden my conscious mind's got a new story, right?
Right.
I say, what about the subconscious mind? I say, it doesn't learn that way at all. It has nothing to do with that. Subconscious mind learns in 2 fundamental ways. Hypnosis, which is how it learned for the first 7 years.
Right.
Then habituation is how it learned after 7 years.
Okay, stop there. Wait. I go ahead. Hypnosis. Okay, so because people are going to go like, wait. So define hypnosis as you understand it right now in this conversation.
Okay. Hypnosis means when we were children, 7 and under, our brain was working at a lower frequency than consciousness. Alpha is consciousness. Theta is the frequency band below consciousness.
Okay.
The brain is working, it's integrating data and all that, but it's not working in consciousness, okay? That state is hypnosis, meaning all the child has to do is observe something, not be instructed or coached, just observe it. And the observation is like a video recorder, recording, down, program, put it into the jukebox of behaviors down there, right? Mm-hmm. Did it touch consciousness? The answer is absolutely not. Consciousness wasn't even working.
Or the awareness, the aware mind. So they're not aware of it rather than saying it consciousness.
No, and that's why you're not aware of most of the programming, because most of it happened before your consciousness was even a working state. So the issue is most of the programming happened before consciousness, so that means consciousness cannot refer back to an awareness of having been programmed. It just was programmed beforehand. And so you can get into this state again. So if I can lower your brain frequency down to low alpha and theta is better, at that moment I'm shutting off your conscious processor, but I'm opening up the record data processor.
I actually have my students listen to a 60-minute tape with theta brain entrainment, brainwave acoustic training, with ocean sounds while they do their homework.
That's exactly, that puts the brain down into a state where the information goes in subconscious, because the conscious is not even dealing at that level. So it's really, if you want to change a program, you want to go into subconscious.
Right.
And I said, okay, so subliminal tapes work as well, that you just talked about, right? And the reason why, very simply, is this. remember, the brain vibration is state of consciousness and awareness. The lowest one is delta, is sleep. The next one is theta, that's imagination and hypnosis. The next one up is alpha, which is calm consciousness. And the next one up is beta, which is schoolroom focused consciousness, right?
And gamma.
And so during the day, you're in beta, and then as you come home and relax, you start to bring the vibration down to alpha. And as you're starting to go to bed and drifting off, you're passing through theta as you go to delta. Delta is sleep. So if you're awake at alpha and beta and you're going to go to sleep, somewhere you're going to have to pass through that theta. That's why if you put the earphones on at night,
Right. And
you're going to automatically go through theta. So just as you put it on, it'll be reprogramming while consciousness is sleeping.
This could be a whole other hour conversation about brainwave and stuff. So I don't want to stay too much here because I could talk about it forever. I want to go back to the honeymoon effect because I think it's really important. And as I said, I could talk to you for 10 hours. In your book, you talk really, really in detail about this effect and how, if we could find a way to maintain a relationship to that effect as well and be really aware of when we lose it, and then through repetition and habituation, right, we can it's like rehearsing a new state of being, a new state of openness and hope and we're so acutely aware of everything around us where every molecule starts to become, that's what we feel like when we're alive. So just give us one way that you do it.
To what? Reprogram the subconscious?
Get into the honeymoon effect.
Well, one of the things is just becoming aware of it, as you said. So once you become aware of it, then you can start to do something like change the path. Right. Once you're aware of it, you say, wait, stop that, let's go this way. Every time you stop and redirect the system, that's a learning.
Right.
And the repetitions of that repetition will get it to the point that it will stop earlier each time. And there'll be a point where you won't even have to think about it because the stop mode is already there before it even goes into that thought. It's been repeated, stop, go off here, so many times that it just bypasses the problem and goes right to the new solution.
So the honeymoon effect, and the reason I'm asking you to do this, but I'll tell you what we do. So part of the whole idea of being in love, and there's many different components of how one feels when they fall in love with somebody. Oh. And when all of life begins to have a different, you feel better. Everybody always used to tell me that my skin looked better, and whenever I was in love with somebody else, I had more guys after me. The
neurosecretions of love. Just biochemically, if I took the brain secretions that come when you have a thought of love and put them into a culture dish with cells, the will grow exuberantly well. So there's no reason to, the issue is you're feeding 50 trillion cells with the secretion from your brain. When you're in love, the secretions from the brain encourage health and energy and wholeness and all that of the cells. So that's why the moment you start really getting in love, you glow, you feel healthy. Yeah, man, you're putting, the juices into the culture medium called blood that will encourage that.
And since we have a point of reference of what that feels like, most of us do anyway, right? So we can, because it's memory, since our brain is memory-based, the subconscious is a memory-based program. So we have a memory, and we can also create an emotional environment, because we talk about environment, right? The environment of this cell dictates the nature of this. Okay, so we have the environment, and we can remember that. We know what it felt like, and if we keep on basically practicing love, practice being in love over and over and over again, eventually that's the reward itself, because it feels good.
And when you do this, then it becomes automatic, and there's not even a thought that I'm practicing it. Why? It's just everyday life. I don't put an effort into it. That's the beautiful part about, if you really understand the nature of how wonderful the subconscious is, because it's always got a bad rap of, that's where all the hell comes from. The fact is, no, it is a device to help you.
Right.
It helps you by things that you need to repeat frequently. You don't have to stop and use your conscious mind. If it's automatic, it just pushes a button. Well, guess what? If you're in a relationship and you have programmed yourself to be automatic in this relationship like you were in the first few days.
Right.
Look, how many times when you really fell in love, how many times you say I love you during the day? how many times did you just see each other at that moment and go, fall in love and sing it and all that? And then I say, well, that was great during the honeymoon. I say, how many times do you say that today? How many times do you just see your partner just in the house, walking from one room to the other room? How many times in the process of that do you stop and say, I love you, you're wonderful, you're beautiful, things like that? You start to realize, yeah, when you were just really hot, man, that was a lot. And then all of a sudden you got into regular life, and then that stopped becoming part of the issue. Well, that means then that's not, now you have to work at being in love. The fact is, what if you just said it so frequently that it feels, you know, as you said, once it becomes a habit, it's like you don't even think about it. Matter of fact, if you don't do it, it brings your attention to it, you know?
See, I have a habit of being happy.
Well, that's a habit I have. And
I know, that's why I love you. I mean, yeah, I love life. I love it. I don't take it
that's
for
what's
granted.
all about. That was a choice, and you have to make that choice. But then to make that choice and get out of the program that says you can't be happy, then you have to make this the program. And as you said, habituation, repeating it, doing it with consciousness. Even if it's not true.
Well, that's the point. Everything is not true. I mean, when you think about it, since we're programmed by other people's ideas and their experiences, or for the grandmother effect, then that what was true for them becomes our truth, but we inherited it. That isn't necessarily
but you
true.
can see that you were being driven to realize that truth, and that's the invisible part that has sabotaged everybody forever.
I think in a really rudimentary way, I mean, you can use this analogy where you have a woman who's been in an abusive relationship over and over again, or even one really horrible abusive relationship. She gets out of it. She sees 10 men who look exactly the same. They're all really good looking. You know, they're all really great. There's one abuser amongst the 10 men, and she's going to smell him from across the room. And he needs a victim, so he's going to smell her. And the two of them are going to be like, boing, boing, boing.
Absolutely. That's a codependent relationship that says, my bad behavior complements your bad behavior, and together we're very happy because you're fulfilling my badness.
Right, but it's true. And intellectually, you would never actually say, "Oh, I'm going to go find somebody next to abuse me." I've been clean and sober 27 years, and we always say you can't rob an alcoholic of their bottom, right? And I really slammed into the bottom. And reinforcing, when you get sober and you're around sober people, there's a language that's reinforced of hope, of dignity, of grace, of faith. And the more you surround yourself with these people and the more you say these things over and over again, even though it sounds repetitive, it becomes your reality. And so coming from the gutter, thinking you're dirty, to coming to being in a place of incredible faith and happiness and dignity is something that is a miracle. And I am walking proof of that miracle.
All of us, to some degree, have to come over these bad things, and if you're not aware of them, that's where your biggest problem comes from. Not that you can't get over it; it's just you just don't have any concept of where it all came from. So it's time for this driver education, conscious mind. Listen, you're the driver, but you have to realize you're not driving all the time.
Right.
Program. And once you do this, and once you start doing the habituation, once you start doing the repetition, and as you said, if it's not there now, you still go through that behavior.
Right.
Because you have to change. Look, the people that are in your life now are in there because they resonate with that vibration. Like you talked about, the sadist and the masochist recognizing each other's vibration. Well, the people in your life are there because they're matching your vibration. If your vibration is programmed by negative programs, then you're going to have negative people in that situation. You say, well, how do I get rid of the negative people? And the answer is, what you have to do is start thinking in a different way that doesn't, stimulate their vibration. So you take yourself out. And you say, yeah, but I'm not there. And I say, it doesn't make a difference. You must start taking yourself out with a new vibration because these others are waiting around for you to fulfill that compliment that you've always had with them. And until you change that behavior, they will be there. Mm-hmm. And you have to change your behavior before the other people show up.
Right.
The other people show up when your behavior has changed.
The first and most important component of the Envision process is learning how to be in the neutral observer. And because we don't look at the details of the story and we create a landscape that represents the story, and we get spatial distance, like I said earlier in the conversation about having, that distance of being on the bird looking down at the original landscape and seeing wait a second, how is that so powerful when I'm over here and I'm up here feeling free and fabulous and I feel really calm mom, and I've released all these chemicals that make me feel good. And then I looked down at the first place that I was really attached to, because that was the program that always put me in the overwhelm. Then you start, but if you don't repeat that, you're going to go back to the original program.
That's the second way of learning. The first way of subconscious was hypnosis, and the second way was repetition.
Right.
If you don't repeat it, it will not learn it. That's why reading a self-help book is great for the conscious mind. It'll get the conscious mind just one reading. I got what it said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it didn't do anything to change any subconscious programming. And that's why so many people are like, well, I read all the books, I have all the knowledge, and my life still sucks. And it's like, yeah, because you've educated conscious mind, but you have not
integrated it.
Integrated because the subconscious mind did not learn from those ways.
Right. This has been an amazing conversation. I want to thank you so much. Now, where can everybody get your book? The Honeymoon Effect, and actually anybody who's not read your earlier books, The Biology of Belief, Spontaneous Evolution, and The Honeymoon Effect are 3 extraordinary New York Times bestsellers. And where can they order it? Can they go to your website and get it from you, or where?
Well, on my website, I actually have right now signing editions of The Honeymoon Effect for people.
Great.
Or you can go to Amazon. But the website has more than just the book. It has the kinds of things we're talking about, articles and things that people can download and read.
Perfect.
To expand on these little, I mean, we took this and compressed it a bit.
We made it interesting, I think, for people who might be curious, and I'm hoping that they will go. What is the, is it drbrucelipton.com?
No, just BruceLipton.com.
Right, BruceLipton.com. Sorry about that. So Bruce Lipton, as in the soup.com. And you also have this fantastic membership where I get all your videos where you're dressed up like Merlin. You look like a wizard. And it's very cool. Considering we have a character in my process called the Wizard of Awareness, I always want to call it Bruce. Right? Let's call on Bruce.
Well,
so how do they get
I enjoy that because it's a way of... it's just like there's a lot of new science coming out, and most people can't understand the science because it's like going to church and it's all in Latin, and you go, I know, I can repeat the words, I have no idea what the hell it means, and it's like, no, but some of this is profoundly important to our lives, and so you need to translate it from, okay, here's the science talk, what does that mean to you? So I try to do that on some of these videos.
Yeah, I know, it's awesome. I always refer back to you because a lot of people say to me, well, can you back it up? I went, yeah, look at Bruce. Just look at his videos. He knows the science and he can talk like me. I only know how to talk like this, and then we prove it by going over there.
Well, this is so great because there's that new branch of science called behavioral epigenetics.
Right.
And that science says your life experiences and your emotions are all involved with shaping your genetics, which is empowering for this reason because you're the one that can change your perceptions and your attitudes. And the moment you change them, you take control of your biology. So,
and your biology encompasses also the outer world, because I think that I want to make that clear too.
Oh yeah.
Because people have a tendency to still think about biology as only their physical body. And when we talk about biology, in genetics, we are talking about the greater environment that you engage in. So it's your life is your biology. Your biology is your whole life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Remember, your survival is based on interacting with the environment.
Right.
And you are driven to survive. So the behavior, not just to take care of my internal body, but it must make sure I'm in a good place in the environment. Right. Otherwise, my life is threatened. So then behavior becomes controlled. So your outer life experience is all tied into your belief about survival.
Oh, I'm so excited that you've spent time with me today. Yay! Okay,
thank you.
I love you so much, and I'm so excited to share this with everybody. God bless you.
I so appreciate it, and thank you for letting me speak to all of your big audience. I so appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.